you doing these days?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I let's see. So I have Crohn's disease. I've had Crohn's disease for most of my life since I was about 10 years old, and I'm now almost 50. But I had colon cancer a few years ago and had radiation treatment for the colon cancer, and the radiation did a number on my digestive system. Probably not a good idea to give radiation to somebody that's got severe Crohn's disease. But so anyway, those are the two reasons I'd be interested in the stem cells, and it's hard to find much information out there. I would love to have a doctor tell me exactly where to go and what to do and that type of thing in regards to the stem cells. But so I'm definitely very curious.
Excellent. And it was because it was all the GI was not working. So you've had Crohn's disease, you've had colon cancer. You clearly have something attacking your GI system.
Oh yeah, my GI system is as messed up as you will ever see.
Yeah, that's what. And so then you go, well, you could get different medicines to like try to deal with the symptoms of Crohn's disease, but that basically doesn't get to, well, what is causing that? And I know our doctors who have now dealt with many hundreds of clients with all these autoimmune disorders. They look at it and go, well, clearly you've got an autoimmune imbalance. Your immune system is attacking itself. And so it's feeling like if you eat food, that there are things it needs to go out and attack. And that results in your internal organs flaring, trying to detox by passing food through, which means you don't get the nutrients. And it also means you get damage in your literal damage to the GI system. And then it can also lead to then growth of unhealthy tissues. And there you go with cancer.
I agree. And again, the radiation damage on top of it has been a big issue. So I definitely have an immune system, or starting with my GI tract. My GI tract is a mass of scar tissue and inflammation, basically.
Yep. That is how doctors should approach it. You could probably talk to a lot of clinics out there and they just go, well, you'll feel better if you get stem cells. You probably will, that's fine. But it's not addressing the root cause of anything you're dealing with, more than likely.
Are you a stem cell? I mean, I'm a little bit confused as to your relationship or what your business model is. Are you a stem cell clinic? Is that
we're not? No. We
Okay.
do not give treatments. We got into this business. There are a tremendous number of labs and clinics and doctors and a lot of good science, but the problem is nobody knows where to start. If you said, well, how do I find a good doctor? Well, How do you sort them out? How do I know which labs my doctors are dealing with and whether they are using really great processes and producing really great biological materials? And you can't do that unless you're down here to see, to go visit the labs and do the due diligence on those. So we started working with doctors here in Mexico. We're in our fourth year of it, and kind of seeing, going around and doing evaluations of different labs and their protocols and their materials and certifications and so forth. And our goal was, hey, if we can help people find the right treatment, then there's a space for that. Because otherwise people just you see all kinds of questions on, I don't know, any social media, Reddit, Facebook, whatever. Hey, I'm thinking about going to clinic XYZ. What do people think about that? And unfortunately, most people, it's hard to get any information at all. That's what we do, is we we know the labs, we know the doctors, we know which ones are best, and we know how to connect people with specialists who are all medical doctors, all have minimum 5, but typically 5 to 15 years of stem cell experience as well. All have a specialty, so that could be anything from internists, oncologists, orthopedists, you name it, to say, hey, these doctors know how to do this and do it a lot, and are top quality doctors. Let us connect you to them. And that's kind of our business, is connecting people to really high quality providers, and we know not only the doctors that we refer to, but we know the labs that they get their products from.
Right.
Okay. For my case, I mean, off the top of your head, do you have someone you would recommend?
I do. One of the doctors we've worked with for about the last year and a half is one of the top 20 doctors in the world in credentials, and one of the top 10 in all of Latin America. He's based in Tijuana. So we have doctors that are based in Mexico City, Guadalajara, Puerto Vallarta, Tijuana. But it's Dr. Adolfo. He's an MD. He has a PhD in addition, and he has 2 master's degrees in regenerative medicine. And he is the best internist that we could refer anyone to.
Okay. Let me ask you this. So stem cells is sort of his a specialty, or that's something that he definitely does?
Yes, absolutely. He's a like I say, he's an MD, and all of our doctors they go to med school, they get their MD, they have their own clinical practices. The difference in our doctors is, at some point once they became a doctor, they also went through the additional training to become regenerative medicine specialists on top of being an MD. But all of them have a specialty of one sort or another, like I was mentioning, the orthopedists and the oncologists and so forth. But they're ones who have said, hey, I think I want to add all of this regenerative stuff, whether it's stem cells, NK cells, dendritics. We've got literally, I don't know, last I checked, 250 different things in their toolkit that are all under the heading of regenerative health. That if you're a traditional doctor, you don't have those because you don't understand them.
Yeah, we've all of us have gone through the treatment ourselves, or going through the treatment, and we're just really big believers in it. And we found this kind of a need for a lot of people who are trying to navigate and understand the opportunities better. And since we've been doing this now for 4 years, that's what we're trying to basically come in and be your guide and help you make those selections, connect you with the right doctors, the right labs to really get a great alternative and a great treatment plan. But go ahead, George. You had a follow-on question?
No, well, I'll just tell you what, I know very little. I've done a little bit of research online. Sure. It's hard to find much. I've had consults with a clinic in Colombia and another one in Panama. And anyway, that's all I know. I really don't know much. So anyway, I'd be curious to learn more about this doctor and how I would get in touch with him and things like that. Off the top of your head, as far as the stem cells are concerned, what type of stem cells he uses and what type you certainly know much more about it than I do. What type do you recommend?
There's not a single answer on that, because
that's a really great question.
Yeah.
And what needs to be done is we have to really understand your personal situation. But go ahead, JT.
Yeah, so there are many different types of stem cells that have very specific uses. And so, for example, you have bone stem cells, you've got neural stem cells, you've got a bunch of things, but they're very specific in their application. If you talk about, generally speaking, what is the state of the art for stem cells that are used for most, call it autoimmune related disorders, which I think definitely Crohn's falls into, MS, lupus, etc. You're generally going to find that those are going to be mesenchymal stem cells, and they're going to be a particular set of mesenchymal stem cells called Wharton's jelly, and that's the material within the placenta and umbilical cord that is specifically called Wharton's jelly. They removed the stem cells from those materials, and those are kind of the state of the art of, call it general purpose stem cells. The best labs in the world are using those. And then the second key criteria is that you want to get live stem cells, not stem cells that have been cryo-frozen. And that's a big hiccup in the US and a lot of places. Even if you can get mesenchymal stem cells, which is extremely limited and hard to do in the US, you're going to find that virtually in all cases, not 100%, but call it 99% of the cases, those stem cells then, after they're produced, are cryo-frozen to about -80 centigrade. And to do that, you have to put in DMSO and other kind of antifreeze type agents. Then you have to unfreeze them, put them in a body. And basically the freeze and unfreeze process in most NIH type studies shows that anywhere from 50 to 100% of the cells get killed by that freeze process. So when we're working with doctors, we want them working with top labs, and we want to make sure that they are using non-cryo-frozen stem cells, which means it's logistically more complicated because a doctor cannot, or a clinic cannot just keep the stem cells in a freezer. They have to know that if you're coming in for treatment, those stem cells have to be produced within 72 hours of your treatment, so they can be kept cold but not frozen. But that way, you're ensured to get basically 100% viability of cells, meaning no dead cells, or virtually no dead cells, are going into all of the cells you have are live cells.
Right. That makes sense. Do you know an approximate price, or would I have to talk to him or his facility directly before I could get an approximate price?
If you said go across clinics that use very good quality mesenchymal stem cells, you're going to find that on a dollar basis, the price of stem cells is between $40 and $50 per million. So if you need 10 million, you're talking, just multiply it times 40 or 50. So you're in the hundreds of dollars. If I need 100 million stem cells, then I'm talking, $4,000 to $5,000. Okay, and you can just scale it up and down. That works really well for people who, really the vast majority of our clients who have, say, autoimmune issues where stem cells are going to be most of the plan of treatment, then that math works well. For example, it's not uncommon for someone to get a prescription for 200 million Wharton's jelly mesenchymal stem cells. Okay, so just do the math. You kind of come up with ballpark $10,000. You can get the same cells in a lot of other places for equal quality. Panama generally it would be about 5 times that amount price wise. So, but you're getting exactly because they have people like professional athletes and movie stars endorsing them online, and they can charge that.
Gotcha.
So their standard protocol is you get a prescription for 110 million cells, give or take, and it's $28,000, give or take. Okay, and I'm telling you, they use good cells. They use identical cells to what the doctors that we work with use. But for that same thing, we would be talking about $6,000. They would be talking $28,000. And I would never kick sand on them. They've got a great, we know the CEO runs it. We lots of, you know,
it's a great service.
Exactly. Yeah, no discredit. It's just, you know, if you can afford that, then that's fine. So that applies, and you know, generally speaking, in your case with Crohn's and things like that, that's going to be the majority of your treatment plan is these mesenchymal stem cells. The doctors, of course, would give you a plan of treatment, but I always put an asterisk with all of this because we do have people who come in for other things where stem cells aren't even relevant, or they're a tiny portion of the cost, and it honestly wouldn't matter what the cost per stem cell is. So for example, you know, when we talked about cancer treatment earlier, cancer protocol won't have any stem cells in it, not early on. Maybe once the cancer is like defeated, then you've got some organ damage, fine. Stem cells can be a part of that. But if someone said, hey, I want to consider stem cells for my cancer, no, there's a bunch of regenerative material, NK cells, other things that would be appropriate to talk about. But pricing wise, it would be like comparing, you know, apple juice to motor oil. I mean, it's just like there's no comparison. It isn't relevant. But for most people, kind of think about $50 per million of stem cells is market price for really good, for the really top labs. Getting treatment from a doctor who uses stem cells from a top lab. We have people who come in and go, well, yeah, I know that price was high, so I found a doctor who would do it for half of that. And then more times than not, they'll go, oh my God, that was a bad experience. I wish I hadn't done that. We have Alana has a question about mitochondrial diseases. We've had, I'm trying to think, mitochondrial diseases with, you know, poor growth, muscle weakness, those kind of things. Our doctors have dealt a lot with that, typically in conjunction with diseases such as MS, for example. Alana, I don't know if you have a specific underlying disease, if that's inherited or whatever. So they'd have to go through the figuring out what the root cause is. But we do have doctors who are excellent at kind of diagnosing and giving you, hey, here's what I think the root cause of that is. I think and she asked about a Dr. Calzada at BioAdvanced Medical Center. I don't know that doctor, and I know of that center, but I can't say anything about it. So no endorsement or anything negative to say. Yeah, so that I see the note that it's a genetic condition, and typical, you know, very often the mitochondrial diseases are inherited diseases. And that's where you really want someone to look into what is the specific genetic defect or cellular defect that is triggering that, and how do you work with that. And there are very few doctors who can have that conversation. There are many who can have the conversation with you about how can we treat the symptoms of that. And if someone says, I'll give you stem cells and that will cure it, they're probably not thinking of root cause. Yes, we can, you know, again, connect you to, in this case, it would be the same doctor. I can give you, you know, we've got lots of doctors, but in this case, it would be a conversation again with Dr. Adolfo, because he's the MD and PhD, and his PhD is in molecular science. So that is his forte, is looking at that cell level, what is working, what's not working. If it's not working, what's causing that, and what is the path of treatment. you can go out and look, and I think you can look on PubMed at all of the studies that are being done on stem cells, the typical FDA protocols of how you bring stem cells to the market. I haven't done this in probably the last 9 months. I think about 9 months ago, I looked, and at the time, there were something like 55 active studies. There was something like a big number, like 2,000 that had been filed saying, we're thinking about doing a study. And so filed with the FDA saying, we're thinking about doing it. Only at the time, 55 or so were active. And that in most cases, you find that of the ones, it's kind of like it takes between 2 and 5 years to do a full set of clinical studies that cost a minimum of $5 to $10 million. So you don't just do them by getting 30 people and giving them something and then doing double blind and doing the statistics and putting paper in. That you have lawyers that have to get involved and work with the FDA and define the protocols and so forth. So it takes a long time to set one up. That's why all of a sudden 2,000 potential double-blind studies will become something like 50 that ever get started. And of the majority of those, they won't have enough people both start and finish the study to have it be successful. Because in a lot of cases, they'll go, I need 50 people. Because I know during it, some people are going to drop out. They're going to, for lots of reasons, going to drop out. So I'll need 50 people to sign up to start. Well, a good number won't get the 50 people, so they can't start. And don't use a 50 as a hard number, but it's somewhere 30 to 50 people. In a number of other cases, they'll get it. Well, I got enough people to start, but then partway through, I had so many people who didn't follow the protocol, just dropped it voluntarily or whatever, that I actually had to just stop my study. So now I've invested in this, and it's dead. The study has no good, no good database to do any extrapolations from. So if you look at it, the types of studies that tend to be in process are things that have, they need to be for fairly widespread conditions. Like who does those studies? Well, pharmaceutical companies do it. Why do they do it? Well, they got a lot of money. They're in that business. They know the FDA procedure and so forth. So they will get in to do that study because they're looking for something, but they're not going to do it for a disease that 1 out of 1 million people have. They're going to look at something where they go, I don't see a medical way to do it. I want to try to come up with some regenerative way. I want to think about stem cells, whatever. And most of the pharmaceutical companies really don't have that strong of an interest in finding a cure. They want to find a treatment. So you can go find those. What you'll find in a lot of the double-blind clinical trials is you've got to pay your own expenses to be in there. You may even have to pay money to be in the study, help subsidize the study. We had one gentleman who spent a month in that study. He was told at the end, yep, you got the placebo. You actually got nothing out of that study. And he spent a month and his health degraded while the study was going on, but you don't know during the study whether you're getting stem cells or whether you're getting the placebo. So you can look at that. It's almost like it's mostly a dead end. There aren't that many things going on with the FDA to really make progress trying to broadly apply stem cells to anything. Like I'm not aware of a single study going on about stem cells for long COVID. And yet long COVID has been identified as the FDA as qualifying for an exception where the FDA will accelerate the approval of anything that has to do with helping people with long COVID. but again, the pharmaceutical companies go, well, I have this drug. Let's try this. It's a blood pressure drug. It's this kind of drug. If it gives some relief to the hypertension that someone with long COVID gets, maybe I can get it approved for use for people who have long COVID and are suffering with hypertension as a result. But that's not the same as saying I'm really trying to solve a problem. I hate to tell you that, but if you're looking for double-blind clinical trials, there are studies going on worldwide. It's a fairly large number that are listed and a very small number that ever get underway.
So yeah, next question is there not much research to back up the treatments?
So it depends. If you say, is there a little or a lot of double-blind studies to back up stem cell treatment? The answer is very little. Okay. If you say, is there a little or a lot of clinical experience? The answer is there's a lot of clinical experience. It's not in the US. And it varies. Again, we only use doctors who have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of experiences with specific treatments using stem cells, which, it's any doctor in Mexico is entitled to prescribe stem cells. They're considered just like any other medicine. You can walk around any town down here and see little signs that say, I'm an orthodontist. I can give you braces. I can straighten your teeth. I can do this. And oh, by the way, if you need stem cells, I can do that. But that's the difference between I'm able to offer it and I have a deep amount of experience of how to use those. What we focus on is the doctors who have a large degree of clinical experience treating people. And Alana, I'll put it this way. 3+ years ago when we started this, there wasn't a single doctor in the world who was treating long COVID with stem cells. Not one, because long COVID was brand new. So no discredit. But now you roll forward, the initial successes that came out of people just going, I've tried everything else, nothing's worked. God knows, anything that they saw online on TikTok or YouTube or what, that people tried it. Ivermectin, this, that, and but it didn't work sufficiently. And next thing you know, they're like, I'm just going to try stem cells. There was no protocol at all. So it's like, well, how many stem cells and how do you want those administered? And how many treatments should you get? Well, 3 years ago, that was the broadest array of answers. Each doctor would say, well, let's try this. And it could be anywhere from, I'll give you an IV of 10 million stem cells to I'll give you an IV of 300 million stem cells. And none of them could tell you that one answer or the other was better. Or I'll do it all in one dose, or I'll do it in 3 different treatments. But they couldn't tell you if it was best. Roll forward 3 years later, that's down to a protocol now. We're basically doctors who have hundreds and hundreds of clinical experiences all know, the best way to treat that is this and this. And they say, I know because I've done it hundreds of times. Now, if you say, okay, but did you do a double-blind study on that? No, they did an actual, 600 clients of actual experience.
That's a great summary, JT, in terms of just the amount of clinical success that we've seen over the years, and we build on it all the time.
If we have other questions or topics, otherwise might be getting close to wrap-up time.
Almost wrap up. Elena has a follow-up, though. Experience and background in assessing doctors in clinics and labs. That's a great question in terms of, how we go about doing that ourselves.
Yeah, Atlanta, that has been our business. Literally, if you go back, like go onto our website on ourhope.com, you can read my wife's story and how we fell into the whole stem cells in Mexico thing. But we didn't have any idea 3.5 years ago that this would ever come into our life in any way. And it saved her life. And we did it just as kind of that Hail Mary, where you're going to die this week anyway. someone saying try stem cells, and we happen to be here. Okay, what can it hurt? And it was my wife who said, after it had such a profound benefit to her, who said, we need to help other people have this become available to them. But the hardest thing is if we had been up in the US and someone said, find a doctor to come to Mexico and get stem cell treatment with, there's no way we could have started down that path. Yeah. It's kind of like you just go on social media and go, who likes this clinic? Who likes that clinic? And doing a bunch of Google searches. As my wife's health got restored, we started meeting with doctors down here, and then kind of figuring out the hierarchy of which doctors have the most experience and the most training. And we did the same thing with labs, because my wife and I can tell you stories of labs we've seen that are set up in the kitchen in someone's apartment for stem cell lab. And yet that lab markets itself quite a lot as being a very high quality lab. It is literally in an apartment kitchen. And nobody's in white suits, and they're like, you're just cooking this stuff, right? So what we've done is we spent the last, 3.5 going on 4 years of always talking to doctors throughout this segment, and talking to them not just in Mexico, but throughout Latin America, throughout Asia, Europe. And then when people raise issues, either good or bad, this lab seems to do very well, we go investigate. This doctor, literally today, Steve knows this, we have a lab and a doctor who want to do business with us. Okay. They don't pass the smell test at all. They pass the bad cheese smell test, where you just kind of go, no, you're sending off every sign. And frankly, this lab and this doctor are in the US. And yet we know the questions to ask. We know how to do the due diligence. We know how to compare them to other doctors, to other labs. And usually when we ask these questions, which we have with this US organization, when we say, good, we'll talk to you. Here, send us this information. They'll say, why don't we have a phone call instead? All right. Meaning, I don't have that information. I want to talk to you. I just want to talk to you. We've got a very formal process, and we go in with the idea that someone has to prove that they've got a better organization. We're not beholden to any doctor or any lab. We upgrade them whenever we can. If someone says, hey, I've got a better orthopedic specialist. We've got a doctor that we've used a couple of times over the last 1.5 years, who has stepped up to be a primary doctor with regard to this particular specialty. And it's because in dealing with them, we realized they were better than the doctors who were referring to them. So that's the general process. Is we personally know those labs, we personally know those doctors. I won't say anything good or bad about another lab or doctor unless I have facts to put with it. So someone asked me about Panama. I can tell you what I know about it, and I say it's favorable. It's expensive, but it's favorable. What I don't like is they have the same prescription for everybody who calls.
JT, there's a certain certification in labs in Mexico as well, if I'm not mistaken, that are kind of like entry tickets, standard things that we would look for, and not every lab has those certificates, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, good point, Steve. COFAPRIS is the equivalent of the I don't know, it's somewhere between the FDA and the NIH in the US. But if you're a doctor or a lab, you are required to be COFAPRIS approved, which entails different things, like our labs have to be audited twice a year. There's a very strict protocol how they get audited. It requires independent testing where certain samples of what they do, they test, but then the COFAPRIS takes a sample as well, sends it to an independent lab. They compare. If the two numbers all line up, then we're all good. If they're different, then the lab has a problem. In Mexico, you will find that Virtually every doctor and every lab will tell you they are Cofepris approved. We had a study done a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago. Yeah, about a year, March or April last year. That showed that out of the prominent labs, clinics, doctors that we could identify throughout Mexico that say they are Cofepris approved on their website or what have you, 80% of them were not. There's a website you go out to, a government website, and you can look at that. And so anyone who said they are approved and in fact are not, then of course we cannot work with.
Right.
That's just a minimum standard.
Example of the due diligence, just on the very basic first step, and many more beyond that.
Yep, exactly. Like, are you certified the way you're supposed to be certified? And there are 100 other steps that that we look at, and what we find is if they're not upright, they don't even make it past the first 2 or 3 questions. It's not like they need to score 87 out of 100. If they're not really top notch, you get to about question number 4 and you're like, I don't really need the other 96 questions.
Right.
But a lot of great questions on your behalf. We always tell people, don't rush into these things. Take time and do your due diligence. Don't get too swayed by, we in our Facebook group pretty much disallow anyone giving opinions about medical treatments or opinions about different clinics. And the reason is, if I don't know anything but I give you my opinion, you've gotten dumber, not smarter. And a lot of people do that, going, well, my cousin said her friend had a good experience at XYZ clinic.
Yeah. Okay.
Me posting that may seem like an affirmation, but what that really is I'm just bored and I'm online. I'm not helping you at all. And so we don't allow that kind of, we don't allow people to go, well, when I got treatment, I got a prescription of this. You see a lot of that on, Reddit and whatever. Well, I got 100 million of this. Oh, and we have clients, Alana, I'll tell you, we have clients call us and go, I saw someone on YouTube, they got this treatment at XYZ clinic. I have what they have. That's the prescription I want. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
really? You're using the YouTube to testimony of someone to say, I can diagnose and self-prescribe, and it'll all be the same.
Yeah.
And generally, we would say those aren't clients who we're going to be able to work with.
Yeah.
We trust the experts to do the diagnose and prescribing and treating. And people just kind of saying, I got my information online, usually says you probably need to spend more time thinking about this before you commit to it.
Len, I hope that able to answer your question there. Those are great questions too. We appreciate them. We really appreciate you coming on board and joining us today as well. We have a couple minutes if anyone else has any final thoughts. Otherwise, we'll sign off for this week, and we'll be back again in 2 weeks, as always.
Yeah, Lana, great questions, because whatever you ask, someone else will want to know that, and we try to spread this information. Kind of hearing what people are concerned about helps us fine tune this. And like Steve says, we do this every couple of weeks, just to give people a place to come ask any question they want, and we're happy to refer them to places to find good research. On our Facebook group, you can use the search function and go in and type diabetes, or go in and type mitochondria and see reports. We post reports from NIH and CDC and other things around the world that are related. So it is searchable in the group, and there's actually, like 3 or almost 4 years of stuff that's in there. All right.
Great.
Sounds like we're at a wrap, Steve.
I think so.
We'll see you again in see everybody in 2 weeks. Lana, great questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Everybody have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.